Optimization theory itself is one of the underlying problems. This is actually super important, so indulge me a moment here.
Yeah.
If we do the thing you call stack ranking, which is an idea that comes from computer science, if I think about computers and I'm stack ranking trying to optimize things in a software system, that software system is a complicated system as opposed to a complex system. And I'm going to define those formally, the difference. The software and the hardware it runs on didn't self-organize, right? We didn't get spontaneous self-organization of hydrocarbons into protocells and cells. We got somebody did the lithography to make the computer chips, and there's a blueprint for the hardware and a blueprint for the software. In a complicated system, you'll notice like this computer and the software doesn't repair itself if it gets harmed. It doesn't self-evolve. And the phase space of all the things it can do are fully explicated. And it has formal causation. If I hit this key, this will happen, necessary and sufficient causation. In complex systems like biology, there isn't a blueprint. The genome isn't a blueprint. It's a generator function to code new proteins under new environments where you can have it do things that it's never done before if you expose it to a novel pathogen or a novel environment, right? So a generator function and a blueprint aren't the same thing. In a complex system also, it does self-heal and self-repair. It does also self-evolve. It's different in type. So optimization theory from complicated systems, the metaphor where we thought our mind was a clock when we figured out clocks. Before that, Native Americans might have thought of the mind as an ecosystem, right? But then we got a clock. Now, no, the mind is a computer. So we pick whatever the metaphor that we're operating with is, but where the metaphor is wrong, it really fucks stuff up. And so it can give you some very partial insights and also some really dreadful differences. So the definition of a complex system is that it has some emergent properties beyond what any complicated model of it assumes that the complicated model doesn't show. So basically, if I take a cell and I try to model it, right? So I try to make a software program for how that cell works. The cell will do some things that that model doesn't do. And as I keep making the model better, it'll keep doing some things that the model doesn't do. That's what we call an emergent property, right? So what that means is if I make a model, because my model of reality isn't reality. That's the first verse of the Tao Te Ching, right? The Tao that is speakable is not the eternal Tao. My model of the thing isn't the actual thing. So if I think the model is the thing and then I try to optimize for the model, where the model and the thing are different, I actually destroy the real thing.
Can you put that into real world example?
Yeah, I make a economic calculus. I make an economic system for humans or these rational self-serving agents, and they follow specific supply and demand economic models and laws. I can get more advanced things to be able to look at the laws of how they'll deal with things like derivative, like black skulls, whatever. But they're basically simple mathematical laws and say, here's how we optimize maximum productivity and generativity for everyone. And they don't work, right? Like they kind of work. And then they also lead to environmental destruction, which wasn't part of the metric set.
So this is where why I'm trying to get you to stack rank things, which is interesting that for you, that's where it breaks down. For me to understand what you mean when you say it doesn't work, I have to understand what you're trying to optimize for. So once I understand, because I in the beginning, when I first started diving into you, I thought, okay, this is about optimizing for what I'll sort of round to human well-being. But I think there's an important caveat in there, which to you, it is sort of beyond critical. And I think the whole meaning and purpose for you is that as long as it is not a hell, that continuation is a critical thing that is sort of behind every word that you say. But I'm not sure I'm interpreting that right.
Okay, so let's say that we're maximizing for subjective happiness decoupled from objective measures. And so we're going to find some types of states that we can subjectively report on. Well, then the matrix might actually be the best way to optimize for it, right? Disconnect from any kind of objective reality outside of brain stimulus and just brain stimulate the fuck out of the dopaminergic response and say, great, we optimize for human happiness. And I don't think anyone actually thinks that's a maximally meaningful world. Or if we say maximize for the happiness at the individual level, well, some individuals might be sadists and really get off on hurting lots of other things. If we say maximize for continuance, a continuance that is really shitty, it's like, why? What is meaningful about life that you would want to have continue? So what I hear that you're trying to ask is what is fundamentally meaningful? What is, if we cannot, I won't use the word optimize, but if we can act in ways that benefit different things. We can say optimize, but what you're going to end up seeing is that it's not optimizing a single metric. Let me actually make that clear. Let's say that I value the life of rhinos and I don't want them to go extinct. And then I also value the life of coral and I don't want it to go extinct. But I also value kids that I don't want to starve in the third world. And I also value subjective happiness of poets. Now, how many dead rhinos are worth how much dead coral, are worth how many dead kids, are worth how much lack of happiness, are worth how many tons of CO2? How do I commensurate those metrics to then be able to say what my optimization algorithm is going to optimize for? I have to do some kind of weighting. And then I say, well, but in the context where the rhinos get below a certain number, they're worth more. But then when they get above a certain number, they get, oh, but then I didn't even account for all these things, these soil microbes without which everything dies. And I didn't even account for them in the system. Now I got to bring soil microbes into it. And then I didn't account for the fact that subjective reporting will have these biases or miss these things or orient towards addiction. So whatever my optimization set is, there will be things that matter that are outside of it that I have to continuously bring in. So the optimization is for the evolutionary integrity of the whole or wholeness itself, which is different than how we think of theory of optimization. So do we care about people's subjective experience? Yes. We also care about objective metrics of the quality of their life, like longevity and physical health and things like that. Yes, also care about that. Do they correlate one for one? No, there are some very happy people who are crippled, and there are some very physically able people who are miserable. There are some people who are happy who make other people miserable. And do we care about just individual quality of life or also the relationships? What about happiness versus evolutionary rate? What if we could be happy but stagnate versus evolve quite quickly but never enjoy the things we were evolving to? And we all have this in our own life, right? Like, do I want to be bettering myself, but in a way where I'm bettering myself because of the driver that I'm a piece of shit who's never enough, so I always have to get better, but I never actually enjoy any of it? Or do I accept myself in a way that makes me complacent? Well, obviously, neither of those. I want to enjoy what is fully and have my love of life have me want to keep growing, not because of a dysfunctional driver, right? So I'm optimizing for, if anything, the product of the dialectic of my experience of life now and my ability to experience life more deeply into the future. Now, if I take both sides, if I say I want to be able to enjoy the beauty of life as fully as I can now. I also want to be able to add to the beauty of life for other people. I also want to deepen my capacity to experience the beauty of life and add to it. Being, doing, and becoming. And then you say, how do we optimize for a virtuous cycle between the modes of being, doing, becoming, individually and collectively? Now we start to get in the right direction.